I'm Charlie Ward. So I'm a community builder, a researcher, and an AI tinkerer. I switched from London ad agency kind of world to become a product manager, and then eventually became more of a community manager and SaaS founder kind of thing. So I've had a bit of a sort of generalist background kind of thing, I would say. And I'm a daily user of AI tools for all sorts of things, from like coding, research, problem solving, making illustrations, that kind of thing. I just try and use them to just get more work done faster and also do stuff that I couldn't actually do before that. So a bit about the kind of tools I use. I use a lot of Claude Opus for like problem solving. So like, I was doing some customer segmentation recently based on some data, and I was interested to see if Claude came to the same conclusions as me, and then asked it some questions. So it's just very useful for that kind of thing. For event flyers, I use MidJourney. So we've got a common prompt we use for certain types of illustration. It's very retro futurist kind of stuff for indie biz. So that's been amazing. Some other things, common ones you've seen, like, Zapier, Framer, and for coding, mostly ChatGPT, especially GPT-4. So I use like a range of things, like some NoCode, some more AI coding. So to summarize my career path, I went from advertising to tech. I was like, yeah, that looks great. Like a lot of you here, Product Hunt was kind of the gateway drug for me. And maybe indie hackers as well, but once I found it, I was absolutely hooked, because I didn't realize at that time, all you saw in just like TechCrunch and stuff about, you've got to raise $1 billion or whatever, and I didn't realize you could actually build something yourself, share it with people, and make money, and it was just like a real eye-opener for a lot of us. So the next phase was me kind of specializing a little bit, and I was like, okay, within the tech world, there's this things called communities, there's SaaS, and within that I learned a lot about, the different tools people are using, the different things people are building, and stuff like that. So yeah, it's been a bit of a journey for me. In terms of the projects I work on, the first is called Indie Biz, which is a free meetup community for indie hackers. There's about 3,000 members now across different kind of meetup groups around the world in Tokyo, London, Lyon, Lisbon, and soon New York. And hopefully Copenhagen. I mean, we'll see about that one. But anyway, I kind of started there, and then people were like, wouldn't it be great if we could kind of co-work together and do these other things? So I kind of accidentally started a paid community called Ramen Club. There's about 250 members. So it's like a kind of more active Slack. We have co-working. We've got in-house mentors, discounts, online events, that kind of thing. So it's kind of like Indie Biz Plus, I would say, and this is super fun. A couple of the things that people are working on, some of our members have built things like Veed, which is one of the biggest video editing sites in the world. Marketing Examples by Harry Dry. TinyHost, which is an amazing web hosting tool I think a lot of you would like. You can host basically any kind of file really easily on there. And, we've got some others working on some cool stuff. A new stuff I'm now working on is called Cozy, so it's like a basics Slack SaaS for community builders. It's quite early stage. And it looks like it's been kind of a linear sort of process, me making all this stuff. But honestly, it was nowhere near as linear as it sounds. It was a little bit messy than it might first appear. But, I love doing it. Fun fact, the first meetup I ever did, almost one person came and they left before I got there. Which the text, I was like, hey, where are you, man? He was like, I just left, it was awful. So I was like ready to pack it in right there, honestly. I was like, this isn't for me. But he came back. So he went all the way from Liverpool Street. He went home to Southeast London, which is like 45 minutes. I was like, mate, I'll buy all your drinks if you come back here. Please, don't leave me here. And he actually came back. Shout out to Matt Overton, a friend of mine. And honestly, if it wasn't for that, I might not be here today. So yeah, shout out to Matt. And the next meetup was better. So, this is like more people came, obviously. Fun fact, that's Johnny who started hopping on the left before hopping was hopping. But, it's just a good crew of people. So that's a bit about me. So about a year ago, I started writing threads on ChatGPT. And I'm sure a lot of people, show of hands who's used ChatGPT for coding in this room. Quite a lot of you, I imagine. Yeah. I'm sure you're all very familiar with this stuff. So, me and a lot of others in our community have been playing with different AI tools for a while. Like I'm sure a lot of people here were. And then it kind of changed March 14th when GPT-4 came out. It just felt like it was like a kind of noticeably better at doing basically everything we were trying to do, including just like coding stuff. And so I remember it arrived, a lot of us were co-working at the time, and it just felt like, this feels like something really new and exciting, and we were all just kind of playing around with it. I stumbled across this tweet. This is Joe Perkins. He's a friend of mine I've never met in person, just purely from Twitter DMs. There's a few people like that. And I noticed he wrote, last night I used GPT-4 to write code for 5 microservices for a new product. He was quoted $5K to build it, and then he just built it himself in 3 hours, and where previously he wasn't able to do that. And this kind of blew my mind at the time. I was just like, that didn't even seem like, realistic. So I decided to get involved. I was like, okay, if he could do that, wonder if I could do that. A bit of background, I'm not a developer. Obviously, I've worked in tech for like 5 or 6 years. I work with developers a lot, but I'm not a developer. I use NoCode a bit, but I'm not even a bubble developer kind of thing. I'm no kind of developer. I've never actually deployed something to production. So I decided, can I make a Chrome extension? And so this is called Marketing Quotes. And all it is, look, it's simple, I know, but it's you open a new tab on Google Chrome, and you get a new random marketing quote from a set like list kind of thing. And there's no way I could have done this before this. Because not only does it write the code, I was like, okay, how do I deploy this to Google Chrome exactly? And it just broke it down for me step by step. And it actually kind of worked. This is kind of how I built it. So has anyone here used Replit? Show of hands, you used Replit before? So Replit's good because it's more of a cloud-based IDE, so you don't need to install software packages and languages, and you can just deploy stuff in the cloud kind of thing. So I kind of pasted my code from ChatGPT into here. Had to do a bit of debugging, obviously, and then it just ran. And I was absolutely amazed at this. And then I was like, okay, how do I put this into the Chrome store? And then I got it into the Chrome store, and it actually has users and stuff. And I was absolutely wowed by this, because while I was able to generate code before, I not actually deployed something that people could use before. So it kind of blew my mind. So I decided to join the fun on Twitter as well. This is the first one, so everyone's laughing at all the ChatGPT threads, because there was a lot of kind of thread boys at the time, just like, like sharing a lot, like, oh my God, like. So I was a bit nervous about getting involved in that, but a man who can't code, just built and shipped a Chrome extension in 45 minutes using Replit, and it was the weirdest feeling ever, which is absolutely true. This is all true. And it got 2.1 million views, which is viral for me, certainly. And we got some love. People were saying, hey, would you share some more information? Would you share a link? That sort of thing, which was awesome. Got a bit of hate as well. Some people were, multiple times I've been accused of making up that I'm not a developer. And it's funny, because it's very hard to prove that you can't do something to somebody, because you can just not do it. But, that's just something that's been following me since. But really, I can't. So I was like, okay, I need to get busy. I need to actually kind of show them how I did it. So this was a follow-up that came the next day, and if you go to my Twitter page, you'll still be able to find this. It's basically how I built a functioning Chrome extension, 10 steps. I spent a lot of time just like making sure it was just super clear, super simple, make it 10 steps and that kind of thing. And it got loads of bookmarks, so a lot of people, I think, actually kind of used it, which was like, really great. There's a bit more info on here. I don't think we need to play this right now, but I'll send it after. But just going through the full steps, I'll send my Twitter after, and you can have a look. But the main things really for this, were generating the code, pasting it into Replit, testing that it works, figuring out how to export it in a zip file for Google Chrome, and that was basically it. If you're doing other things, like you're creating like a database and like user registration stuff, it's a bit more complicated, but for like a kind of simple product, you can do it like this, basically. And lo and behold, other people were actually able to replicate this. Shout out to John, who's a friend of mine now, who I met because of this. And people just like, oh wow, you actually can make your own Chrome extension and other things. And I wasn't the only person writing this kind of stuff, but I think it did open people's eyes that like, oh wow, you can actually do stuff with this. But I was like, I'm not done. I've got one more I want to do. And so I made something called Ramen Shop, partially influenced by Ramen Club, but we listened to a lot of lo-fi beats and stuff while we're co-working. And I was like, oh, it'd be cool to make a digital radio player where you just play and pause and it just plays lo-fi beats, and it's in like an anime ramen shop. To make this one, it's slightly different because it's not a Chrome extension. It was like more of a website. So you had to think about like, you had to generate the image with MidJourney, and it was a lot harder to generate really good images back then as it is now. They actually created an anime model after this, not because of this, but like since this, because so many people were making kind of anime sort of images and that sort of thing. The great thing about it is then you could just say, oh, how do I actually get music into this? It's like, oh, use this kind of website, find a URL, paste the URL into the code, and then people, when they press play, they'll just be able to stream lo-fi beats. And it just works, basically. So yeah, this was a lot of fun to make. It was probably my favorite thing I made with it, actually, so far. So this was what that thread looked like. So this was really fun. And I'm not going to play that right now. So yeah, that was like my experience. It was a really fun time on the internet. I'm sure a lot of people remember that from a year or so ago. It was just like, it felt like really exciting. And then, about a month later, something quite weird happened. So I basically got an invitation. You get the vibe of this kind of thing when you see how they do the fonts. You were talking about fonts earlier and having serif, like I think you know why. But they're very much in the serif era at the House of Commons. But it's not like Rishi Sunak showed up to my house and gave me this. It was referred by Joe, who you saw earlier, actually referred me to this dinner. So they do these dinners, I think, quite regularly in there. And also, I wasn't in the room. They do Prime Minister's questions. They have other dining rooms and that sort of thing. But yeah, it was like a Future of Tech dinner. They do it every now and then in something called the Churchill Room, and what they wanted was a live demo of ChatGPT to this room full of sort of MPs and lords and just random rich people they were friends with. And I was like, yes, I'll be there, don't worry. So that's me in the House of Commons, well, outside the House of Commons, unfiltered photo. That is another picture of Big Ben without me in it. And that's inside the House of Commons. I'm not sure I'm meant to take that, but you've got it now. There's a bit of a catch, though. So how long do you think I had? So there's about 4 or 5 other speakers. How long do you think I had to do this demo? I like to shout out a random. You're pretty close, pretty close. I had 4 minutes to do a ChatGPT demo, and this is my face afterwards. How can you do a demo in front of a bunch of MPs, lords, other people, donors, in 4 minutes? Anyway, so I did do it, but it took a lot of practice to get it down to a specific amount of time. So I started thinking okay, who is my audience here? So I tried to relate it. And by the way, this changed the day of the demo. In the morning, I demoed it to some people at our co-working, and they were like, no, you need to make this much more related to these people. So we completely changed it that morning. So I said, okay, these people are lawmakers, right? So there was this bill going through, which I think now has passed, called the Online Safety Bill. For those not familiar, it's basically, this purpose is to add a duty of care to a lot of web platforms in the UK and make them a bit more responsible for the content moderation. There was some kind of concerns about privacy in that, but that's basically what that law is about. So I thought, let's make it about this. So I thought I'd just demonstrate it in the context of 3 major ChatGPT use cases. So first, around summarization. So let's summarize this bill into 2 paragraphs. So I got on stage and I just did that for them. The next is analysis. So I'm prepare me with 5 difficult questions a journalist may ask me about this. The final one, and this was one I was most nervous about, was coding it. So write code for an annoying question generator to help me prepare for press conferences. So you just press a button, and it would just generate a new question. So if you wanted, I don't know, if you're on the way to the press conference, maybe you could. I don't think they'd actually use it, but it's just to kind of show how you could. And the way we did it was, like I mentioned earlier, just pasted the code into Replit, deployed it, opened a new tab, and luckily it worked. Just to give a sense of what this room is like the general vibe. So this wasn't the night I was there, but this is the vibe, and this is the actual room where it was, the Churchill Room. And it was very interesting, because I'm not normally in rooms like this, and a couple of things I realized. Well, first of all, someone moved my bag from my laptop 10 minutes before the presentation, so I was running around trying to find that when they called me up. Luckily, found it in time. A couple of other interesting things I learned was like, so a lot of people are lobbying very hard to get in these kinds of rooms because they're full of like MPs and people with actual power, right? And I noticed like when we were in between the talks and stuff, there were people making a beeline for a certain person, this person, that person, because they want to get like funding, support, networking, help on some kind of bill. I was just vibing. I was having some wine. I was just like, let's do a good demo, have some good chats, and let's get out of here, honestly, because I was like, I didn't even know who these people were, honestly. But it was just very interesting seeing like how this stuff all worked. Another thing I would say, I was actually incredibly surprised by like how knowledgeable the MPs and the people there were on these topics, considering it's like 1% max of like what they have to think about. They asked like some really surprisingly good questions. They seem to have quite nuanced thoughts on it. Although at one point they started asking questions to the host, and I think like, when do you think the singularity is coming, came my way. To which I was very happy to deflect it to the next person. I was like, above my pay grade, mate, honestly, I'm just doing a demo. But very interesting experience nonetheless. So I just want to pause here and just like, consider that originally I did a tweet, then I was doing a talk about a tweet, then doing a talk about a tweet, and you are here. And so maybe tomorrow I'll be doing a tweet about a talk about a tweet. So we'll see. So, this kind of comes into like the topic of just like the future of building software. And I don't just say this from this experience, from just like 5 years of building communities of software creators with NoCode, with code, with AI, with everything really. And just some thoughts on that, basically, and why some people are a little bit concerned about the future, but I don't think you necessarily need to be too worried. Since the demo, obviously, we've seen huge leaps in, say, AI capabilities across all forms of digital media, whether that's code, images, video, text, audio. I don't know if there's any more, but... And due to all these things, the trends point towards software development getting cheaper. Just the price of creating, say, a Chrome extension, 5 years ago, the same Chrome extension would have cost you a lot more. And I think that's the trajectory everything is heading in. And it's not just due to things like AI, but also that, outsourcing and like more people around the world learning software development. The supply is increasing. But there was a very interesting talk recently from Mark Andreessen and Ben Horowitz, who run A16Z. So look, they're not right about everything, obviously. There's lots of things they've been wrong about. But sometimes I think they're very right on certain topics. And they mentioned something called Jevon's paradox, which I thought was fascinating. So simply, this paradox occurs when tech progress increases the efficiency with which a resource is used, reducing the amount necessary for any one use. But the falling cost of the use increases in demand enough that resource use is increased rather than reduced. That is a bit of a mouthful, I'll admit. But generally speaking, if something eventually, the supply of something, it eventually becomes cheap enough, it actually causes a bit of a rebound, in fact, because the demand is so much, the whole pie grows massively as a result. Some examples of this, and a few people kind of agree with this, some historical examples of this is like when you build more roads, in the short term, it can lead to a bit more space on the motorway. If you build more lanes on a highway, it can lead to, it's easier to get around. But eventually, it leads to more traffic because more people start making journeys. Similar like CGI in Hollywood, it was developed to reduce the cost of filmmaking, but people's expectations increased, so costs involved in CGI actually eventually increased. So coal consumption increased in the Industrial Revolution when the coal prices decreased. And some people at the time must have been like, oh, God, it's a bad time to be in coal. But it's probably a very good time to have a coal business at the start of the Industrial Revolution. But they just weren't thinking on a long enough timescale. And, if we look at the search trends, low-code searches just up and to the right, no-code searches, I know there was a particular spike then, but it's still very much up and to the right. AI software searches, slowed a bit, but still, you can see where this is all going. And my kind of general summary around this kind of topic is that software is getting cheaper. Everyone knows that. This is either bad or good, though, depending on how you react to that. Demand for software will increase massively as the price goes down. And I think there's generally two kind of main options to compete if you're interested in building software, whether that's for clients, whether that's for yourself. I think you basically need to make much better software is one option, because the tools that are going to increasingly be at our disposal are just going to mean you can just make a lot more. You can build something which has more features, better features with less people than ever. And I think that's just the direction everything is heading. Or you need to make your software much cheaper and faster. And I think if you just stay in the middle and try and do the same thing, I think those people might start getting kind of eaten away by people who adopt new stuff and try and do one of these two things, basically. So there's a quick bonus. So I think in this age of where building things is going to become easier, a bit more kind of focus will go back onto just like what the idea is. So a lot of people say, oh, execution beats ideas, but I think a better way of looking at this is like good ideas are actually a part of good execution. Like if you look at Microsoft is not one idea, it's like thousands of ideas over like 50 years. And you can't just like separate these two entities, in my opinion. And just in terms of like thinking of ideas, this is something I've seen a lot just from working with a lot of different sort of founders over the years, is that generally if there's no direct competition, no indirect competition, so by indirect competition I mean, does this exist in another market or like a more primitive form? So another market can mean another country, but could also mean a different platform. So like if something works on Android, it should work on iOS, or works in Chrome, it should work as a Firefox extension, and there's a million examples of that. And also if there's no search traffic, generally you're just going to have a bad time, and it's not going to work so well. I've seen it there's exceptions, there's always an exception, but generally speaking, 9 times out of 10 it doesn't work. So I got a few frameworks to try and come up with useful SaaS ideas and other kinds of ideas, not just SaaS. It's just to do the opposite of those things. So instead of no direct competition, find competitive markets and build something that's better or cheaper. You'd be surprised. This is actually a lot easier than you think. If there's no indirect competition, find products that work in one market and launch in another. So one of our members at Ramen Club is a guy called Andy Cloak, and he runs a startup called Data Fetcher and lets you run API requests from an Airtable base. And he got that idea because he saw, in Google Sheets, someone was making, say, $5K a month from running API requests from a Google Sheet. And he's like, why would that not work on Airtable, which was taking off at the time? And when you start to think of it just in that sense, there's actually like so many ideas that you could do just by thinking of similar platforms. And if there's no search traffic, instead of things with no search traffic, use SEO analytics tools like Ahrefs, SEMrush, Key Search, and find undervalued ideas. So to do that, you look for stuff where there's high search volume, but also a low keyword difficulty, so it's easy to rank for. This goes back to like my original Chrome extension thread. There's this quote from a guy, my friend Saba, he runs a V called Make Something People Search For. And it's just to try and find things that people are obviously looking for. This is obviously especially useful if you're looking for more consumer, prosumer ideas. So there's some enterprise product where there's low search volume, but the value of a contract is so high, it's still valuable. So this is not like a perfect framework, but it's actually directionally quite useful, I think. So that's how I found marketing quotes, because I saw there was huge volume looking for marketing quotes, kind of stuff. So I'm going to give you some free ideas, because I don't think anyone's done these yet. So the first one is a CMOS product directory. So I found this on Exploding Topics, that there's a mega trend of people looking for CMOS-related products. Then I was like, okay, let's put CMOS into Ahrefs, and there's tons. So KD means keyword difficulty, and it's out of 100. So if it's under 10, that means it's pretty easy to rank for on Google. And SV means search volume. So you can see there's tens of thousands, in some cases, searches a month for all of these CMOS things. So you can make a directory which you compare different CMOS kind of products, and you could probably make money from affiliate links or from ads or something else. Anyway, another one, you can make a SaaS for AI GIFs, because there's, right now, the AI GIF and AI GIF generator, those keywords are just absolutely taking off. And you can make this quite fairly simply, if you made a bubble and plugged it into like Stable Diffusion's video API or something like that, you could actually probably have a pretty good go at this. And I don't think anyone's made a good solution for this yet. That's free idea number 2. You're just going to be careful, because when you spend time on Ahrefs and other SEO tools, you come across some weird stuff like how to sell feet pics, which is taking off. I'm personally not going to make this website, but someone probably will at some point. You learn a lot about human nature on search traffic tools. That's all. Thanks for listening. Appreciate you.